That's disgusting. I don't understand that one at all. There's a lot of things in this country that I don't understand that we're looking at right now. As I continue to say, it's about us to educate ourselves, about us getting registered to vote, and going out there and doing that, and making sure that we're educated on who we're voting for and what they're going to do while they're in office. So, I mean, that's one of the biggest things that I'd say we've taken a step as a team is trying to just talk about that, the importance to vote and the importance to, for our voices to be heard throughout our communities and be leaders there. But that's simply unacceptable, and don't understand an officer not being charged in that case.
That's Dak Prescott, Cowboys quarterback, yesterday meeting with reporters talking about the decision to not charge any of the officers involved in the shooting death of Breonna Taylor in Louisville earlier this year. And, you know, Peter, when I see that, when I hear that, I think, boy, it wasn't that long ago that the question wouldn't be asked and the answer wouldn't be given. And it's amazing how far we've come, where we're at the point where it's natural to ask the question, it's natural to give a real answer, and it's natural to not care if there's a segment of the audience that hears it and disagrees and gets mad and huffs and puffs and may or may not blow someone's house down.
Well, I remember at the start of the season when people were looking at anecdotal television ratings evidence and saying, see, people don't want athletes to be talking about this crap. They just don't. And they're going to vote with their feet, basically, in their eyes, and they're not going to turn on the games. Well, as I said at the time, I said, to me, that's a lie. It's an absolute lie, because people will watch football. People like football. They can compartmentalize their anger over, no matter how far to the right, left, middle, wherever they are. They know that now that athletes are going to speak up and say what they feel, just like LeBron James did. Last night in the middle of the game, there's an Adidas commercial, and Patrick Mahomes is talking about, you know, all of the social ills in our society. So these guys are not going to shut up anymore. And I say, good for them. And I do believe that at the end of the year, I don't know what the ratings are going to be. We saw the last time in an election year that the ratings cratered for a while because everybody was so intensely interested in the election in 2016. Who knows what the ratings will be this year? I don't know. But to think that John Doe in Plano, Texas is going to say, well, that's it. I'm not watching Cowboys Seahawks Sunday because my quarterback is talking about Breonna Taylor. I mean, you know, first of all, that's not going to happen, number one. And number two, it might happen very, very, in a very scattered way. But I don't believe it's going to happen to do something like crater the television ratings.
And it's amazing to see the dog whistling of racism that happens in situations like this. And I know there's going to be people who get mad just because I've even uttered that phrase. But here's the reality. Anytime one of these incidents happen, the reaction by some is predictable. They're going to view the facts in the light most favorable to the police officer and in the light most unfavorable to the black person who was killed. And let's just ponder for a second what happened to Breonna Taylor. And let's just ask ourselves whether this entire concept of no-knock warrants needs to go out the window, because if it's any of the people out there defending what happened to Breonna Taylor, put yourself in that situation. You're in bed. You have guns in your house because you fully and completely support the Second Amendment. And you also know that you have the right to shoot and kill anyone who breaks into your house. Well, the no-knock warrant authorizes police to break into your house without announcing who they are. So if you're home and you're in bed and someone's breaking into your house, you're going to shoot first and you're going to ask questions later. And the problem is, in that situation, the shot first came from the person who was in his house that was getting broken into, and then a cascade of bullets entered from the police officers who didn't identify themselves in advance. That's it. It's that simple. And you know, people want to try to other side everything. Look, it's a defect in the legal system that needs to be addressed. Independent of whether and to what extent the police officers behave properly, you're setting up shootouts by allowing this to happen, because if people are going to exercise their Second Amendment rights, you have to assume they are going to have guns in the house. And if you break into someone's house, you're going to get shot at. That's what bothers me about this more than anything else. We've allowed this situation to exist that makes everyone's house potentially the OK Corral, Peter.
And Mike, really last night, it was very interesting watching the news. My wife and I watched a lot of news last night before the football game. And there was a neighbor, one of Breonna Taylor's neighbors, said that she heard nothing before the door was broken down. So again, it's basically the police's word that they announced their presence versus the word of Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, who said, I never heard anything. And now there's at least one person who said, I never heard anything either. But be that as it may, and be that as,
Hey,
one
Peter,
shot
Peter,
from the guy.
Hey, let me say this. There's a lot of stuff I don't hear when I'm sound asleep. I mean, that's the other. I mean, it's the middle of the night and people are asleep. You can't process information. All you know is somebody's breaking into your house. So anyway, it's.
But the other part of
tiring.
it, Mike, is the other part is. Listen, we saw the Attorney General of Kentucky the other day stand up and act outraged that anybody would question the decision. And I'm just saying to the TV, sir, there was one shot fired by one side and 26 shots fired by the other side. You think and somebody died who had no business dying. I mean, you think we shouldn't be questioning that? And so, look, I don't know. We didn't sit in the grand jury hearings. We don't know everything. I get that. But to think that there's not going to be outrage by the American people and by very responsible black athletes and white athletes, I think is nonsensical.
And here's the reality of grand juries. You hear the saying all the time, you can indict a ham sandwich if you want to. And more importantly, you cannot indict Charles Manson if you want to. It all comes down to how the prosecutor presents the case. The grand jury typically follows along whatever the prosecutor presents because there's no one else there to offer the other side to it. So if the prosecutor doesn't want to have an indictment, there's a way to present the evidence that results in no indictment. And again, we don't know what happened, but there's a lot of discretion both to get someone charged and to not get someone charged that a prosecutor possesses. What do we think happens this weekend? Because when everything went sideways a month ago, after the shooting of Jacob Blake, Russell Wilson said, hey, if we had a game this weekend, we wouldn't play. How do we think this carries into what we see in week 3?
I definitely think there's going to be some amount of demonstration. I don't know what it's going to be. Quite honestly, I thought one of the NBA games might not get played this week. And I was a little bit surprised that both series continued as normal. And I'm not saying they should or they shouldn't, but I assumed that something was going to happen there. And Mike, I don't know whether it's going to be some team not coming out for 5 minutes, or I don't have any idea what will happen. But, I would be surprised if at the 15 games that remain this weekend, if there wasn't something at one of those games that spoke to the outrage of so many players around the NFL right now.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. And that was one of the things that hovered over the start of the season. We worry about COVID-19. Another reality is another incident, another video that makes people outraged by what appears plainly and clearly to be the use of excessive police force against a black man or woman. That's going to cause potentially a shutdown of the NFL the way we saw it in the NBA.